All right. And you can finally hear me. I've been talking. I believe this is correct. All of my stuff is probably a little messed up. Can you hear me? Am I good? Muted? That's sort of what I thought. Testing? Oh, Jesus. Something got messed up. Oh, God. Yeah. Is it good or is it not so good? Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, good. Okay. So, why am I here? Why today? Well, I need to stream more. I think I asked some people what I should stream about, and they answered, and I liked some of the responses. A handful of responses were terrifying and very hard to understand. So I decided to talk about independent Scientology because I think it's something I find interesting in a way, not in practice, but you know, there's a couple things we can look at, and there's a couple things we can talk about, and I can show some videos, and we're gonna chat about it because I suppose one of the problems with protesting Scientology or attempting to get people out of Scientology is where do they go afterwards? What happens to them? What do they do? What, much like many of us who have been living life and we know life is hard, and a lot of people know that not being in a cult is good relative to being in a cult, but it doesn't. It's a bit arbitrary. Anyway, I just want to cover something because a lot of these people in Scientology might even, or who have left Scientology, might even argue that it's not Scientology as a technology that's the problem, but it's actually just the group itself. And that, I believe, is a mistake. But we'll get into that. Howdy, howdy, everybody. I see we're starting to get a couple people. I don't expect this. This is sort of off the cuff. I don't expect this to go to pop off. It's kind of a, you know. But let's see. Perth Scientology Audit, what's up? Also, while I'm here, I will let you guys know that I did a podcast recently. And this podcast, hold on. Come on now. There we go. This was the This is the Trust Me podcast with Lola Blanc and Megan Elizabeth, two very nice women who were happy to. They were happy. I was happy to be interviewed by them. It was really interesting. The first episode is out now. Apparently, I am just the freaking yapper McGee. So let me bring this up here. There we go. So we ended up being broken into two parts, but they're both ex cult members, and they have a cool podcast. And I'd heard about it before when they've talked about some of the La Poubelle podcasting situations, and yeah, I mean, they reached out to me and asked to talk, and it was a great conversation. I highly recommend you check it out. I am the most recent one. I don't know when the second one's going to come out, so I guess we will. Um, we'll find out. I will say that I am getting like very tired, very tired of doing podcasts where I have to uh, like go over the basics. Like, oh no, tell us if for those of us who don't know who you are, which is like such a majority of people. I just find it a little funny that I'm uh, constantly, you know, going over the same stuff over and over. But I guess that's part of it. You know, that's part of the. They don't tell you like when you're on podcast, they just ask you a lot of the same questions. Not this one specifically, but going on podcasts is a lot of like trying to answer the same question in a different way so that not all the podcast episodes that you're in sound the same. Uh, and the word podcast sort of sort of has a weird connotation to it because everyone has a podcast these days. Probably surprised. I'm even surprised at this point that I don't have a podcast. But let's thank fuck for that because I could not. I will not subject you to that amount of yappery. Just do a summary of what Scientology does in 20 words. Yeah, why don't you try to do that? Either way, Scientology does way more than can fit in 20 words. But I get the point. I get what you mean. Okay. So, in the world of Scientology, I guess I should start more so with what the point of Scientology is. Because I think it's like this. I think it's the core product, you could say, of Scientology is manipulated people. And I wholly believe that Scientology does a lot less than it advertises, even on the sort of the gimmicky aspects, like what they want you to believe that you're going to do, or what they want. Like, they don't actually help anyone in the real world, but there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. It's a lot of like bureaucracy, sort of paperwork, and like minor amounts of like counseling and courses and things like that. But unless you've been in that kind of environment, it's really hard to picture. But there's a system of control behind it all, which we know. And I think it's important to highlight the differences and the similarities between Scientology as it is today and independent Scientology. Okay, because I've actually known people to make attempts at independent Scientology, and I think, you know, I understand that you can't really force anyone to change, and that's okay. You can't force anyone to do things that that they don't want to do, and you know you can only kind of insist that they use common sense, et cetera, et cetera. But that's asking a lot for a lot of people, you know. So it's like, oh, I'm finally out of Scientology, right? What the thought really shouldn't be, how can I do more? But sometimes it can be like you there's this carrot dangled in front of your face in Scientology to like go OT or go clear, and you don't get that. because you're kicked out, or you leave because it's too abusive. And I think this can be more so educational, I hope, for people who are interested in talking to Scientologists about Scientology, because nothing big occurred that drove me to do a stream. I should just make more time to do it, although it is a little rough sometimes. But I don't think there's a lot that sets them apart at all. Scientology, independent Scientology. I think it's somewhat perverse, but I'd like to give you an example. And there are a couple examples. I was also asked by the one of the audio channels is messed up. Oh, that's definitely on me, guys. Every time I turn this system on, like no matter how many times I set it up in the interim, or like I'll prepare it. If I turn my computer off, if I reset it, if I do literally anything, it will mix mash. It'll mess it up. Audio. Splish splash out Saturday night. Audio monitoring, no. Although that would probably help, to be honest. It doesn't really. Is it annoying? Can you? I don't see any settings. It told me my bitrate was too low, which that's expected. But if it's distracting, I can figure it out for y'all. All right. What about now? Can you hear both? Testing. Test. Hello. As long as you can hear it fine, honestly, I need a better system anyway. So I can fix that for next time. I have other topics also that I will get to in coming streams, but okay. Yeah, I don't know why it does that. What if I do this? Okay. Can you hear me now? Is this the same? You can fix it in post later. I don't think I'm the guy to try to fix anything in post. I honestly, I get halfway through and I'm like, this is barely worth posting as it is. That was left and right. Can you hear? Can you hear both? Okay. We've done it. We've done it. Okay. Where was I? Independent Scientology is perverse. What do I mean? I mean...
Well, hello, everybody.
Oh, whoa. I mean that in like what like it begets the question, like, what is Scientology, in like such an annoying way, because like what you're doing in Scientology is reading uh, policies. You are doing courses that are just books made up of policies, or in most cases, just the first draft of something L. Ron Hubbard like dictated to his secretary back in the 50s. Um, so Scientology as a system is designed to legitimize its founder, the person who wrote it, to have value. And we've already seen, it's already been like very well established that L. Ron Hubbard lied about a lot in his life, if not about most things. He lied about his military service. He lied about his marriages. He lied about the motives for Scientology. He also, the concept that Scientology has nothing to do with other religions, or like Scientologists can be like multi-theistic. Is polytheistic is the specific word, but so like he's already lied so many times. It's hard to say on any level, from my opinion, if he's ever produced anything out of his brain that has like actually helped people. And it doesn't help that Scientology is such a closely guarded system of belief that they will make people who leave either turn in or destroy their books or materials that they have, so that no one else can use it. I don't even think it matters if somebody else uses it. And here's why. It's sort of like a half-baked delusion, like a half delusion, okay? So you understand that there are people doing wrong things in this group that you're in. Put yourself in the mind of a Scientologist, right? You're fighting this cause. There's this sort of extra cosmic war that you've become a part of that is very important to the betterment and well-being of mankind. This is the pitch, right? And you're doing things like in your mind, like from your perspective as a Scientologist, you're doing things like auditing, which is supposed to like widen your spiritual space and unattach you from these engrams or ridges or locks or surfax or whatever mental pictures you've picked up from past lives that are holding you down, okay? And oh God, oh boy, is the audio fine? Oh fuck. That's gonna be most of this stream.
How do I get the damn microphone to work?
Add a new source instead, and this new source. Okay. What about now? Can you hear me through both ears now? Just gonna take a second, just a real quick second. When is Dr. Berg going to see the light and leave this dumb cult? When they stop praising him and praising and glazing. That is the prime export of Scientology. Like I said, manipulation. So, yes. Okay, good. I'm going to turn the mic up a bit more. I'm going to turn the mic all the way up. And we're just going to roll with it. It shouldn't be an echo. Oh, no. And at what point am I
going
going
to
to start
blaming
y'all?
You
You
know,
know,
fix your
fix your speakers.
Y'all
Y'all
wearing
wearing
the
the
wrong
wrong
headphones.
Ooh.
Um,
Here we go. No echo. Yeah? Echo solved. Correct? These comments cannot come fast enough. I know I'm talking to people all over the world at the moment, but I think I fixed it. I'm pretty sure I fixed it. Like, it takes like the speed of light. We're still back and forth here. I just want to make sure that I keep talking so people can. Oh shoot. Oh. Oh, are we good? I muted both mic sources. And then I unmuted the one that's actually connected to my mic. Okay. Per says it's perfect, so I'm going to go with that. If it gets bad, just like spam me until I can stop, because sometimes I get. Sometimes I'm stupid. What was I saying? So, putting yourself in their shoes, fighting this fight, whatever. It sort of it. I mean, it definitely preys on like people's inability to, or someone's inability, someone's want to do good and to help other people. And for that, it can really activate this sense of justice and this sense of importance. And there's no like real worship going on. There's no idols. Everything is very sort of conservative and contemporary. And I'd say like a pseudo modern design, because I wouldn't say that any of them are really intended to be modern, except for the Silicon Valley building, which was a pretty boring building compared to the other ones. I mean, it's they want to get buildings that are attractive, so I understand, but like it's not, it doesn't feel like church. Okay, so you have people who believe that this is like a higher pragmatic activity than going to church and praying and hoping that something changes. You're doing things that you are convinced that are actually changing like the fabric of reality. Okay, and at higher levels, this becomes more perverse and more diluted, because L. Ron Hubbard specifically becomes more unhinged and more sci-fi based, and body thetans and Xeno, etc. So I think when you're talking about people who leave Scientology but still believe that L. Ron Hubbard is a great person, this is like a, based on the person's experience. Like Scientology was helping them, which is like an anecdotal. There's no evidence behind that. It's just like how the person feels. And I actually wrote down a couple systems of manipulation that Scientology employs as part of an example. Okay. Independent Scientology is all the vanity and delusion of Scientology, with just like a little less strict schedule. Okay. And it's funny because you get into this like zone where you still believe that what L. Ron Hubbard says is true, except when he like vehemently instructs you to
like abide by the written word as it is and do not change it, okay? Because then what you build from that has a power structure still. You still have a toxic power structure. And whoever controls this power structure, whoever decides, like if you were to, let's say we get Scientology's tax exemption status removed, okay? From there, whatever happens to Scientology or whoever decides to use it, that's up to them, okay? What it becomes depends upon who decides what parts of it are good and what parts of it are not so good, or what parts of it are helpful and what parts of it aren't helpful. It remains a cult in the technical definition. I know a lot of people don't like that word, and I'm sure anyone watching this who is an independent Scientologist will disagree with me. But understand the I wrote this down. Like the technology itself lends too much credence to the efficacy of how it's implemented. And if L. Ron Hubbard wrote this stuff and said the only way that you'll get results are if you do it the way I wrote it, I mean, first of all, you're not getting anything done without instruction, because none of it is in chronological order. It is just like all over the place, contradictions everywhere. Science usually, real science has this thing where it will, when it comes out with a new and more efficient way to do something, or if it finds out that something it did in the past was wrong, you say, now that we've actually found out is not effective, and definitely less effective than this new thing, right? So right there from my perspective in Scientology, right there you lose like half of its legitimacy for me. Because when I was in Scientology, I was constantly trying to make it make sense. I was going through all these loops. I was going through a lot of hoops to sort of convince myself and engineer the right sequence of events that would cause these things to make sense. Like, oh, well, it's a historical record, like separate from its effectiveness. But then why is the standard, your route to, training involve all of these books that have all this outdated information? Like the historical context should be at best organized. Like it becomes scripture because you cannot change it. So it ceases. It is already sort of oxymoronic to call Scientology science-based in any circumstance. But I would say that L. Ron Hubbard didn't know enough about science. He couldn't be taken seriously as a legitimate scientist, so he sort of invented his own science. And I'm sure his narcissism and his like vapid, desire for approval had a part in this. I'm gonna say some things that certain people who, this for most people, they're not going to give a shit if I talk smack about L. Ron Hubbard. But I recognize that there are people who do not like it, because this is for them and for people who want to talk to people about independent Scientology. Someone said, do independents use the cans? If you can get your hands on an e-meter, yes. Which they're sold on eBay. It's when you're in Scientology, it sounds like that you're the most exclusive, like well-rounded, secure thing, and no one leaks stuff. And there's just a handful of people who steal meters and try to sell them off. But it's a lot less maintained than that. I think it's better that it looks busy and it looks secure, more secure than it is. But independents, as we're going to see, are sort of like the decentralized version of Scientology with all the same steps involved. These are very disorganized groups. When I was asked this question, I was asked how many do it? How many people are in independent Scientology? And I would say more than a few hundred, but I'm guessing it's hard to keep up with something so disorganized. In Scientology, in organized Scientology, I'll use that as the difference because Scientology as it is today has a central, organized as it can be, like a system. I'll just differentiate them by that. It really isn't that organized, but it's more organized than independent Scientology. And I noticed a few things while watching some videos about independent Scientologists. And that is that it is more spiritual in nature. It is more faith-based than organized Scientology. This is just an observation. Doesn't mean too much because you'll get people in Scientology who are very ethereal about these things. And I'm going to show you, we're going to watch a video, a couple of videos hopefully. But the point is that the cycle of abuse is built into the tech already. So no matter where you go, if you believe or decide that you're using Scientology the way that L. Ron Hubbard wrote it, you're putting yourself back in that system. Okay? N phenomenas, OWs, PTSness, motivators, TRs, assists, assist tech, all of these things, even the past lives, like especially N phenomenas. N phenomenas, these are just terms that describe technology in Scientology that requires a certain amount of personal investment to sort of encase you deeper. Because they, like N phenomena, someone else dictates when you're done. It's basically what it means. It means that there's a recognizable end to any process or course or whatever, and someone else above you tells you when you're done. Okay? In auditing sessions, you cannot leave until you have reached the end phenomena. Okay? In security checks, in all auditing sessions, the auditor is in between you and the door. So you cannot leave. All right? This is already insane. Okay? This is already control. And it's predictive control. All right? OWs. I'll throw this in there. Overts and motivators. Okay? Overts are transgressions against the code of conduct, and motivators are the reason why something bad happened to you, which is usually tied back to those transgressions. So everything that happens to you is your fault. Okay, this is common in cults. But it's essentially boiled down to something called the overt motivator sequence. You do something bad, and then that comes back to you. Okay? If a 5-year-old is abused, they're gonna, on some level, blame the 5-year-old. This is how the Scientology system convinces you you're doing good. Is like, well, I can't help this 5-year-old improve. You know, even if it was traumatic for the 5-year-old, they did something. And you're like, and you gotta think like that. I mean, it's insane. I always thought there was a gray area, but you're really not in the position to speak up when you're not in like the Sea Org. I mean, hardly if you're not the chairman of the board or a celebrity spokesperson, you really don't have any authority. Senior HCO maybe has some authority, but they're weird. Assists, I see as a sort of love bombing distraction, because you're taking someone who is in a crisis or is in a traumatic zone or area or what have you, and you're taking them to an isolated location where you sort of maintain control over them. Scientology is Nazi bullshit. It's very close. Okay, it's very close. I know there's like a lot of the Nazis are so bad. Like, I tend to jump there and I upset people when I compare everything to Nazis. They're just so fresh on the brain. I mean, who doesn't? But there are a lot of very high control. The uniforms, even, it's like a lot of very strict control mechanisms. Decentralization of individuality, or stripping away parts of you that make you an individual, right? Eating away at your empathy or your self-esteem. Empathy especially. Empathy and sympathy. So sympathy being kindness you allow others, and empathy being feeling for others as if as it would happen to you, as if it's happening to you. It's sharing that. And in the Auditor's Code, do not be sympathetic, be effective. Okay? These are things that you could very simply sort of point out. It's the juxtaposition, the putting next to each other of what the independent Scientologist or Scientologist says is good, and then what the rest of the civilized, intelligent society or people who are professionals in psychology understand through evidence-based therapies to be fact. Now, you'll lose them here. This is where I usually lose the argument hardly survives past the recognition of the difference between a cult and a religion, or a cult and a high control group and like some fringe alternative group, I should say. I want to have some sort of decency, because these people are just looking for something to make them feel important, feel special. That's how they get you. And if it were just about that, I wouldn't have a problem. I really don't have a problem with independent Scientology beyond what it implies. Beyond what it implies, what it begets, as it were. Because if you are, we'll get there. It depends upon a level of zeal and certainty that disregards the negatives of the tech and the negatives of the culture. Okay? The word critical is redefined in Scientology to be something very specific. you know, as I'm talking, I understand it. It feels sort of like a losing battle. But that's again why I said, like, you know, I think it's an interesting topic. I think it's something I haven't really discussed at length before, but I don't know how many people it's going to help, like, in independent Scientology to be like, oh, because they're already thinking, like, L. Ron Hubbard is this genius. But, like, will they look past that? Like, at what point does it cease to become a dangerous thing to learn that L. Ron Hubbard was wrong, right? Or that he was a liar about so many things? At what point did his lies branch over into Scientology? You know what I mean? So there's this thought experiment of separating the art from the artist, as it were, which notoriously is hard to do because let me tell you, R. Kelly will rot in jail, and I'll be happy about it. But every time Bump and Grind comes on the radio, whew, Trapped in the Closet? Are you kidding me? Bro. This anyway, you understand what I'm saying. So I'm guilty of it. I am no arbiter. Somebody recently called me somebody recently on Twitter called me Ian Endless Empathy Rafalco, which I thought was hilarious because yeah, I talk about empathy sometimes, but I have nowhere near endless empathy. Nowhere near. I have empathy for, you know, a lot of people, but most of those people are victims of things and who are, you know, I have the normal amount of empathy plus something, plus this little pillow or this cushion that helps me along, but like it's far from endless. So either way, I think like I don't think I could be a good deconstructor because I skip to the end. I have I have issues like compartmentalizing each step, and I would have to plan it out like far ahead in advance. But I just kind of get to the end part, and I feel like that would be less than productive. But I digress. So the cognitive dissonance between Scientology, excuse me. There's also this whole aspect up here where you have the cognitive dissonance between Scientology, organized Scientology, the culture around organized Scientology, and like how you came to leave Scientology. The toxicity in organized Scientology, in my opinion, is wholly the product of the technology. I've heard so many different opinions about like at what point did Scientology become bad? Okay. And like, cause it was like doing well and everyone was doing great and it was having a lot of people, but that's really not true. It has always had issues, and I blame the internet. Well, I blame Scientology, but I blame the internet for exacerbating the situation. So let me break that down. There are people like I personally believe that Scientology as it is today and what David Miscavige is doing is within the confines of the tech, the keeping the tech pure or whatever, or what is for the benefit of Scientology is on purpose. It is what LRH intended. Um, so I really, it is Scientology as a system of understanding, of belief, whatever, is so toxic. It has boiled and the water is reduced, and whatever was in the water is now congealed and hardened and become rigid. I think it's all a symptom of itself, right? And um, I think there's so many excuses L. Ron Hubbard makes for like why he could be wrong, why he what's it called? How to explain away basically the tech not working. And the most convenient aspect being that if the tech doesn't work, you're an SP, you're a suppressive person. You're actually all that's evil in the world. So the best thing in the best technology man has ever created, which isn't really true. It's a man created it. Men didn't create it. Humanity did not create this technology. This was a guy who stole bits and pieces and threw it together, called it an original thought. If he was alive today, he would be using ChatGPT to design Scientology, no doubt. I'm sure that's already happening as well. But yeah, have you ever reached out to Brittany Simon for a collab? It'd be interesting to hear you guys talk about objective versus subjective morality. I don't know Brittany Simon. Simon.
Why do grown women dress like little girls? Maybe it's the male gaze. Maybe it's the patriarchy. Maybe it's trauma. But what if it's for the female gaze? I want to explore this idea of the female gaze and contrast to the male gaze without actually centering men in the conversation. So just popular. Girl to girl, they to them, whatever you identify as.
I love that. It sounds like fun. If she reached out to me, I'd love to talk about it. I'm not one to put myself out there for like. I'm going to be like, let me show you how much I can contribute. Hold up. Attention over here. Let me blow your mind real quick. No. I'm more happy just contributing in the way that I feel most comfortable. It'll either get better or it'll get worse. I really don't concern myself with predicting the future. The future's already happened. You just haven't seen it yet. But you do get into this topic of objective and subjective morality, and then it boils down to the person. Like, the biggest problem with this topic is individual awareness. What did I write? I said, it's an individual consideration for yourself that will guide you. And more importantly, considering yourself in relation to others. But a lot of people, I understand, do not think this way. So I consider them because they're a variable. All variables are important. It's just that it's... yeah, thank you. If she reaches out, I'm more than happy to talk about it. Yeah, I think it's interesting because the amount of people that I have met who have talked about this, like you have the old heads, the ex-Scientologists who left in like the 70s or 80s. Those are my least engaging conversations because there's always this detailed story and this tightly held nostalgia for how things used to be, and it's all about like you can tell that. And I've seen independent Scientologists like this too, who use the nostalgia as sort of like this nostalgia of this anecdotal what did I call it? About like doing the right thing. Like you're all like, you know, like you were in Greenpeace or something, saving the whales. You know, this these good times and this feeling of relative importance. You know, we live in a society where it makes us feel like we need to prove ourselves and to others that we have to be of great importance to have value. Okay, whereas I personally believe all life inherently has value. Okay, which is also very nuanced. Okay, there is nuance there. So I'm not saying that everyone deserves the same amount of respect or treatment or whatever. I'm just saying that there is value. There is even value in negative, where it inspires a positive, where that positive was lacking, if that makes sense. People do bad things that no one's seen happen before, or seen happen for a long time. We didn't expect this. The response fills the gap. The positive response fills the gap. There are no. It's a whole like introspective sort of game you could play about like what evil was necessary, blah blah blah. But I look at I try to be more of an observer on that and less of a decider. There are people much smarter than me who've seen a lot more of these things play out. There are a lot of ripple effects to morality, both subjective and objective. So I think when it comes to like ex-Scientologists, there is like an absence there, because when you're in Scientology, you are removed from the regular world in a way that like you commit yourself to such a degree for that time. There's really nothing about you that is more important than this Scientology thing that you're doing. Which is why it's so hard to talk to these old heads, because like conspiracies, and they really just can't talk about like what's here and now. And that sounds like a generality. There are people who do not fit this description. I'm just saying, like, I've had these conversations. There are all these different tiers of people with different levels of experience in Scientology. So from someone who understands it very deeply, from the perspective of Scientologists that I've met, I'm sort of using the amalgamation of all of their experience from what I've learned to kind of chart it for you. So if you feel like I'm speaking for you, my bad. But this is honestly going to be uncomfortable for anyone who disagrees with me, which seems to be a lot of people. Look, I'm all right being a contrarian. I'd prefer you to, if you have a question or critique about what I say, you'd ask me about it, or we talk about it. You don't directly have to put words in my mouth. But again, I digress. All right. So and here's something I can say. There's always going to be someone who's better at you than something. Always. Always. It's always going to be someone who's taller than you. It's always going to be someone that's stronger than you. It's always going to be someone who's chiller than you, smoother, who's read more books, who's helped more people. Always. You know? So I don't find it to be productive to punish. I don't think you should punish yourself for playing a game, a losing game of comparison between you and the rest of the world. Okay, that's where I'm going to end that train of thought, because you know, be yourself and do the best you can and try to be better than you were yesterday. That's really, but to like this feeling of importance that you get in Scientology really transcends a lot, because you're dealing with it in terms of like lifetimes. I have my elbows on the table, and every time I move, I just shake the whole goddamn table. I'm heavy, so like every time I move, my apartment shakes. Sorry. In Scientology, there's something called a track map. It's something you use on New Era Dianetics, which is the, it's not, you don't use the book. You don't use the book Dianetics, you use the New Era Dianetics hat pack, basically just like a training manual. It's this thick book, and it's so completely different from the Dianetics book. The Dianetics book should just be thrown in the garbage. Like, they should just get rid of it, because in NED, what they call it, New Era Dianetics, in the NED pack, they talk like L. Ron Hubbard's talking like, yeah, this is like where Dianetics was a paper airplane or a paper glider. This is like the Apollo 1 rocket, you know, which or like a firecracker to a thermonuclear bomb. So why we even were using Dianetics was insane. You know, it just strengthens the sort of ethereal anecdotal benefit in the technology itself. It's like, yeah, sometimes things will work, even if L. Ron Hubbard says it won't work. Sometimes it will, and a lot of times it won't, even though he says that if it doesn't work, there's a problem. You know, sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't, and you're like, you just kind of like roll your eyes into the back of your head and continue your day. But on NED, you are strictly looking for past lives. And yes, I have audited people on NED who were not able to go past life. The rules are basically you accept from the pre-clear, the person being audited, any story from any time, as long as it's earlier than the following. Like, it has to go earlier, similar. So, you know, back when I was a pirate and I was on a pirate ship, okay, get the details from that. Earlier, similar. Oh, well, back when I was a caveman, okay, go over that. Earlier, similar. Oh, I lived on planet Macathau and I had a rocket car and, you know, all that. But you would accept that. And man, I had some crazy ones too. I did it, and I just understand that I have a pretty vivid imagination, so I kind of wrote off my past lives. Once I left, I was like, okay, so that wasn't real. that was just my imagination. But in NED, you keep a track map. You keep a literal like timeline of a person's past lives in their own little book. I'm not even kidding. So there is a sort of transcendent aspect that, I mean, there's an implicit transcendent aspect. There's a definite transcendent. I don't know why I say there is a almost. Definitely is, where the stakes become more than, you know, not paying your bills on time. The stakes become bigger than I have an illness. The stakes become, at that point, for hundreds of thousands of years, sometimes millions of years, depending on how far back you go back, I have been stuck and I have been hurt and I have been put through the ringer. Like, you are literally reframing your problems to be not only bigger than yourself, but bigger than like the survival of any amount of people. Like they transcend like the existence of species in some cases. I guess what I'm getting at here is excuse me. I guess what I'm getting at here is, like, it is a trap. Whether you do it in an org or you do it at home. This is a mental, self-sealing, transcendent belief system that is based on delusions of grandeur and imagination to uphold itself. And built in are abusive ideals and practices. Now we're going to watch a video. It's video time. I wheel out the TV on the big rack, and I'm going to put it in the VHS player. Remember that? I think I made that joke before. So we're going to watch a video from an independent Scientologist. And I'm going to say this on the outset. Do not, under any circumstances, go out of your way to attack, insult, harass, or harass this person under any circumstances, okay? People are allowed to live their lives. This is purely for educational purposes, all right? I feel like the chat's not refreshing because I'm seeing chats on the screen that I'm not seeing in the... Where did I put it? So there's someone called Scientolo Girl, which is pretty on the nose, who does a lot of these videos, and she uses... She's either British or Australian. I think she's British. But again, do not send this person hate. People do things a lot more harmful than this girl is doing. So this is her world. This is her channel. I think she's allowed to do this. She's not directly funding this like human trafficking machine. I think this is a toxic belief system. Absolutely. It is not my place to attack, everyone and anyone outside who remotely agrees with R. Warren Hubbard. I think those people hurt themselves in many cases, emotionally. But we're going to watch this video to illustrate my point. Okay? I want to make sure y'all can hear this. This is a video called Why We're Hated. I speak out as a Scientologist. I should also say, for people who aren't aware, Scientology is so inclusive. I'm sorry, I should rephrase. That's not the word I'm looking for. Is so restrictive and possessive of its own. That's a better word. Possessive of its own technology that any outside groups, because they cannot control the quality of its delivery, are seen as what are called squirrels, which is just a word for someone who like perverts the technology, basically. These are evil, demented, crazy people from the perspective of organized Scientology. So they do not get along. These people are not... whereas I'm sure this girl would love to have a conversation with like someone at an org. It just wouldn't happen like that. They would say just appalling things about this girl, but I'm not going to do that. I'm more interested in what she's saying and not who she is as a person. Okay. So we'll go over it. So we're just going to watch this. I want to make sure y'all can hear it.
You've probably heard of me before. Oh, you haven't? I assume that because you think you know who I am as a Scientologist, that
Actually, I think she might be South African, based on the accent.
means you know me. If nothing else, you must know that just like my independent friends, I'm hated. They'll try to convince you that it's not who we are that's hated, it's what we do. That's a lie. If it were true, none of us would be personally attacked as we are.
Now, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, no. Anyway, I'm gonna pause, Andy. So let's forgive me for my aggressive pausing, but that already didn't make any sense. Not even full screenshots, too. You'd think it would benefit her to post just like a... But these seem like pictures you take of your computer screen showing a screenshot of Snapchat kind of vibes. Maybe that's her production quality. I'm not going to judge her on it.
But the question is, why are we hated? We're hated because giving people hope that they can live full and beautiful lives is a bad thing. We're hated because helping people become more of who they really are as self-determined spiritual beings must be a scam.
We're hated because... Wow, let's hear that again. Also, the graphics, A+ on these graphics, let me tell you.
We're hated because helping people become more of who they really are as self-determined spiritual beings must be a scam.
Helping people become more of what they really are as self-determined spiritual beings must be a scam. I'm gonna say I find a lot of convenient beliefs there. Okay? Convenient because a science fiction writer who happened to do a lot of immensely shady dealings also just happened to be the most brilliant mind who's ever existed, and he did all of these like, even though like he carved out of nothing the only technology of man designed to free them spiritually, improve them. These are all convenient, like nice sounding things, right? Especially from her argument. But it doesn't cover the parts of Scientology that restrict you. It doesn't cover prerequisites for course time. It doesn't cover the severity of the ethics technology. It doesn't cover like why there is so much distrust in government. Like, the government doesn't give a shit what you believe. Most people don't give a shit what you believe. Okay? There are people who believe in insane things. It is literally what you do on behalf of your beliefs that, like, prove your intent. Okay? Even this video is manipulative, but from a sort of from an ignorance that I can't, I used to have. I used to be this person. Maybe less like fantasy oriented. Okay, but that's kind of what happens when you're a Scientologist outside of, when you're like an independent Scientologist. I can see you're a lot more free to use your imagination and like play around. Whereas in organized Scientology, KSW, which is Keeping Scientology Working, one of the most extreme policies, in my opinion, designates Scientology as a deadly serious activity. Okay. It's about 3 times as loud as you. Yeah, I didn't want it to be quiet, but I wasn't going to talk over it. I'm going to pause it and then talk. So let's bring that back. Like, I think from her perspective, it sounds great because that's kind of how it was pitched to her. That's how she's rationalizing it. But this is how it's pitched to everyone. It's just, this isn't the only group that says shit like this. There are hundreds of groups in the world who make just as much of a convincing argument as she's making right now, and as L. Ron Hubbard made. L. Ron Hubbard just made a lot of money doing it. He's not even the richest or the biggest. There are cults way bigger than this.
Because helping people become more of who they really are as self-determined spiritual beings must be a scam. We're hated because we identify and expose the real suppressors of this planet and refuse to back down and let mankind suffer in the clutches of the elite. We're hated
So, this is my second problem with independent Scientology. It raises the same questions that Scientology poses and provides just as many solutions, which is zero. I mean, there's one solution in Scientology, and that is to do Scientology. There is nothing beyond that. Okay? There is a sort of an ultimatum, if you will. Scientology will be the solution that will save all mankind and let you go free of all these spiritual barriers that you've been collecting for billions of years or whatever. Or we can all just die in a nuclear holocaust and we'll lose it forever and no one will ever... Yep, and it's all gone. And it was all actually your fault because you didn't trust us. The one true religious group. Sorry, I make myself laugh with that one because, like, it's just such a classic... it's just such a classic conundrum. Like, no, but we're the real one. Like, no, but like the last group, they were bad. Okay, I'll admit they were bad. But us, we're real. This one is real. I promise. And then behind them, there's like a line of 7,000 people pretending to be prophets who will say the same thing. It's like, you know, your members will always, like, I can imagine, like, if you're a cult leader, like, your members are always going to do more fighting than you. Like, you look at media, look at how hard these people, I mean, I see them in my comments section. I see people sticking up for their cult leaders constantly. You know, I think what these kind of groups inspire in people, especially when, like, the source of their information comes from a place that transcends the authority of all other life on Earth and all other minds on Earth. It's like this, it goes beyond anything else, like religions do, you know, oh, I speak for God, blah, blah, blah. This does exactly the same thing. It just provides so few results and, like, solutions, like, especially for, and she showed medication, and she said suppressive. So she's including in independent Scientology this concept of PTSness, suppressive people, the definition of suppressive people being like anyone whose sole intention or who's anyone who intends or actively tries to inhibit, restrict, prevent, or destroy Scientology or Scientologists. That's in the PTSSP course. One of the most, you know, important, I say air quotes everywhere, like, important courses in Scientology. Which creates exclusion. So even after leaving Scientology, she's providing the same means of disconnection. Because L. Ron Hubbard totally believed in disconnection. L. Ron Hubbard did not stop people from disconnecting. He said just work around it. AT Chick, outsiders are still raw meat? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Do you mean what do they call outsiders? We'll get around to that. Because they have words for that. There are what amount to slurs for non-Scientologists. And she probably uses them. Again, this isn't really just reflective of her. There are other people much like her. She just posts about it a lot. And there's another guy I saw on here who posts about it. I find the other guy actually more he does AI, like his thumbnails are all AI pictures of L. Ron Hubbard, and it like kind of looks like a guy who sort of reminds you of L. Ron Hubbard, but it's not him. So like I get we're all excited to use AI, but like let's pump the pump the brakes. You don't use it for everything. Sorry, Perth Audit. I'm sorry. I know you're a big fan of that. There was some meat term. Well, non-Scientologists are referred to as WOGs. Okay, that's supposedly stands for Worthy Oriental Gentleman. Just means like a worldly person. And it's a little silly. Apparently, it's also like a slur for Italians. No idea where that came from. But Hubbard worked for Jack Parsons. We're gonna get there. I don't think we're gonna linger on it because I thought about this and I was like, okay, so this isn't to like seek out independent Scientologists and like scrutinize them and hurt them, whatever. Yeah, it's even in the current ethics book. Lewis, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, the current ethics book still has disconnection. It still has these words. It still has this brutal, just heartless connotation to it. So I feel like connotation of the whole system is designed to put you in your place no matter what. Like there is no like, and sometimes we were wrong. I had the senior CS of Flag dictate that my most recent and my last ethics cycle that I had in Scientology back in 2020 was not necessary. And the only reason that he did this is, I'm talking about the most, someone who would be considered the highest authority, the highest technical authority in Scientology, is the senior case supervisor for the Flag Service Organization. Short little old man. You just really see him walking around looking at stuff, okay? I had him, I was in this 5-month-long ethics situation because I had a doubt about, because I said I wanted to be a writer and I didn't want to be on staff my whole life. I was still on my staff contract and I had no intention of breaking it, but this put me in the famous condition of doubt. So I think, so after that situation, I have videos on this. If you go back to my first "Why Did I Leave Scientology?" It's a little messy, but it describes as a gist, and I've described it elsewhere. He reached out basically through my director of processing, who's a person who handles my auditing, whatever, blah, blah, blah. After I had been like, I'm done. I'm not doing Scientology right now. I'm going to take a break. I'm not going to be on staff. Like, this whole situation was horrible. I was trafficked for my labor while I was at Flag. Threatened SP declarations constantly. I was sec checked every other day. I was forced to be in my hotel room. I wasn't allowed to go forward. I wasn't allowed to go back. I wasn't allowed to transfer to a different org. I wasn't allowed to do anything. And I was speaking to like the CO, CLO, East US, Anzo. I was talking to all these like very high up terminals, personally, to be like, how do I solve the situation? This sucks. And it wasn't until after I left and they knew that I was taking a break from Scientology that the senior CS then went out of his way to let me know that it was messed up and it shouldn't have happened. But all that really did was make it so I didn't have to do over 200 hours of amends in Atlanta because I was breaking my staff contract. Verbally or through dispatch? Sorry, I'm not really sure which part of that's referring to. I'm yapping my little head off over here. So, his personal enforcement officer was Julian Swartz. I knew Julian. I don't think he was on my cycle. I was dealing with. I honestly still have all their phone numbers. Let me look through my things. I was dealing mainly with Clemence. Clemence. Is that her name? She was my MAA. Yeah, Clemence. And all of this was verbally. I wasn't receiving dispatches. They would call me. I got out of my room. I walked across the bridge to the flag building, and I sat in HCO for 2 hours waiting for these people. It is so slow. The slowest, one of the slowest places to receive, to do an ethics cycle. I will say that. You can wait in that waiting room for half a day. Easy. Anyway, I digress. It all ends up becoming who controls what tech is important and which tech is not. If you ask me, how I would decide. Actually, we'll get through this video first. I kind of honestly forgot. Plus, you were on camera in a security room, profile, sound, and recording. Yeah, the picture frame next to us that had L. Ron Hubbard on it had this little mirror slit on the bottom of it, and you could tell they were in every single auditing room. I know because when I trained at Flag and I went up to the internship, they had these stations where all the internship auditing rooms were mic'd, cameraed up, and they were recording the e-meter inputs, so I could literally watch the e-meter move at the same time. That's how they do things at Flag. It's very strict. They're watching everything. They see everything. But I was working with a lot of people. I'm better with faces than I'm with names, to be honest. So I'm hardly helpful when it comes to that. But anyway, what was she saying? Oh, right. So I think the junk food is a part of her argument. She mentioned something that I think is really interesting, and I want to know if you can catch it, because it has nothing to do with Scientology. It has something to do with alternative health, but
Real suppressors of this planet and refuse to back down and let mankind suffer in the clutches of the elite. We're hated because the founder of Scientology couldn't possibly have given half his life to mankind, yet he did. We're hated because unlike people like Leah Remini, Tony Ortega, and Mike Rinder, and industries like the psychiatric industry, we refuse to be victims or labeled as victims or promote victim mentality. We are hated because being a victim is far more popular than being responsible over our lives and promoting that every person on this planet has a choice. We're hated because people think they know what Scientology really is. But I can promise you, the Xenu story is just a dust speck in comparison to the wealth of knowledge about you, the world, and life itself.
And that's not even what I was talking about. But that right there, she didn't even deny it. It's a dust speck. Don't worry about all that. You're going to become part of a universal guardian force. Don't worry about South Park. Also, the general claim of L. Ron Hubbard, it's crazy to believe that some people would say that it's crazy to believe that L. Ron Hubbard devoted half of his life to mankind, but he did. He devoted himself to mankind. Okay, I get what she's saying, but if that's in your pitch, that's not really gonna land, because people are saying devoted to mankind. How? Oh my! No, I think I'm just far away from I think I'm just far from... Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, she said she didn't deny this either. So let's continue that.
We're hated
But you get what I'm saying, like that. You can't just be general like that. If you're watching Scientology girl, I'm sorry. If you see this, a lot of people have a lot of really rough pitches with Scientology. It's very hard to argue. I would also say that the way Scientology behaves now is almost entirely through a victim mentality. Constantly blaming Leia Remini, constantly blaming Mike Render, blaming Ron Miscavige, corrupt media. Literally, you say this while also inherent in your technology, you are victims of psychiatry in this grander, more like big picture kind of situation. You're not victims, right? You're not immune to this victim mentality. You actively have to assume a victim mentality to have an antagonist to your story. Okay. Oh, we're not victims of suppression. Yeah, then why isn't Scientology bigger? Because you're out. You have access to the internet. You're watching all these things. Whether you believe it or not, I mean, people can believe, again, whatever they want, but like, whether you believe in L. Ron Hubbard or not, the contradictions are kind of baked in. So you have to kind of work around that. If you want to pitch it, you got to account for the contradictions, and then why am I giving her tips? You want to lie to people. If you really want to get people into independent Scientology, just manipulate them just a little harder. Just be smarter about it. Oh my God. All right, let's...
Because they don't want you to know that, so they choose the most seemingly ridiculous piece of Scientology they can find. But even the Bible has stories of dragons and unicorns.
That one, you lost me there. You lost me there.
Lastly, we're hated because you are hated. Do you really think a system that promotes fear on TV, conformity in schools, GMO and chemically enhanced foods, war and authoritarian control over the...
It's that GMO part. Because what the fuck does that have anything to do with Scientology? Alternative medicine, I get. Even Dr. Berg himself is against the GMOs. Does that stop him from buying bananas? Or lemons? No. He benefits from the existence of GMOs being one of the ways humanity has solved many like food shortages that have befallen us. Obviously, Monsanto is a problem, I would say, because they want a monopoly on seeds, which I think is insane. But literally, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Like, you're dropping these big, large, context-heavy things on people. You're really casting a very small net here. Again, why am I critiquing her approach at pitching Scientology? Maybe I see it as futile. Or maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe both. I think both, probably. Definitely both. Lewis says, an FN can mean a deep sadness or can be an EP, contradicting himself. FNs are one of the most annoying things in Scientology because not a single motherfucker in Scientology can agree on what an FN is, what a floating needle is. A floating needle is a gradual, sweeping motion of the emitter needle back and forth to indicate a release, or that the whatever you're doing in whatever process you're doing in auditing is done, or And it feels not like you're like, oh, I feel really good. But even when it is entirely up to the person doing it. Some people get caught up in also the goofiness of Scientology where they're like, oh, this is cringe and this is really like funny, but I don't have the trauma from it, so I'm going to joke about it, or I'm going to blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I also understand that. Like, I've compartmentalized my experience to a degree where I understand all sides. I have to have my own. I prefer to, you know, be honest about myself. ARC break FN. Yeah, like, you can have an FN that's just fake. You know, one time I had this guy, I was training this guy, and they have simulator machines now. So like this big, like massive buttons where you can plug it into the e-meter, and you train the person in front of you by like giving them all these fake things. I've had a guy who told me an FN was a rock slam, which these are polar opposite things. Rock slam's like the worst thing. It's like means someone has evil or destructive intentions, basically. The only person with the authority to decide what an FN is the person who has the highest authority, post-wise. Like, anyone can be posted anywhere. And like, the Sea Org just demands that you go here or there. You don't get to like choose what you do. So literally anyone who decides, oh, well, like, it's not what this is about. It's a frustrating topic, so I can go off on it, but like, the contradictions make it very hard to pitch. So my heart goes out to this chick, because she's trying. Whatever the fuck this video is, she's doing what she can.
The world really wants you to do better? Do you consider that you're more than just a commodity, more than just a worker, more than just a slave for the system? If you really think you're free, you can close this video and walk away without subscribing and believe the lies they have fed you
Without subscribing.
since you were a little child.
Which puts her kind of in the position of power here, doesn't it? I mean, this is her narrative for Scientology. Also, if you have a problem with the system that you're in, why is the only solution Scientology? Because Scientology doesn't fix any of these issues. It doesn't have any political it doesn't have any, like, it has political statements, but it doesn't have any, like, ideas for restructure. It just sort of assumes that at some point Scientology will be in charge. Like, the question is, what happens when we clear the planet? What does the world look like? What does the economy look like? We're not all in like a bartering situation then. At what point does Scientology become free? Because if everyone in the world is on staff, what the fuck? What what are you doing? Like, think about it.
But if you believe that this video is the starting point, you can and you need to
There's
see how
Alice.
far the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah.
Let everything you do from this point be self-determined.
Well, I'm determined to exit out of this video. Thank you, Scientology girl. Also, it's really weird. Just from an outside perspective, it is a little counterintuitive to make a video called "Why They Hate Us," and in that be like, they hate us because we're not victims. I'm like, well, why are you talking about people who hate you? Just ignore the haters if you're not a victim. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna tell you how to do your job. Like, be uh, you know, it's always, independent Scientology is always a cult. Not because of what they believe, okay, but because what their beliefs and what the technology that L. Ron Hubbard designed infers you do. You are motivated. I don't understand how a lot of people, that some people don't get this. Who cares what he believes? Because if you believe that your house is on fire, you're going to call the fire department. If you believe, you know, there are bugs in your skin, you're going to think that I got to get these bugs out of my skin. If you believe, like, there's always action that follows belief. If your belief is to withhold yourself from violence so as not to beget additional violence as part of your religion, that right there, beautiful. I don't have a problem with people having faith. I myself have, you know, gone down that journey, and, you know, I feel like my personal spiritual beliefs are so convoluted and annoying. You know, it's very personal. I'm sure I'll talk about it at some point, but like everyone has faith in something. We have faith in society existing. We have faith that when we flush the toilet, our water's not going to be shut off. You know, trust is a form of faith. You have trust in, you know, governments. You have trust in the fundamental roles of government to keep society restrained. Okay, and this is beneficial because there are crazies in this world. There are people in this world who, by mental illness, of any kind, out of frustration, out of whatever their personal situation be, act, you know, deformity of the brain, act in uncontrollable, violent ways. Okay, not everybody has access to like a school that perfectly teaches you the right things at the right time, or not everybody has these experiences that humble them or restrict them. Some people go off and just do horrible things, and there is a sort of implicit trust we have in others to help restrain that. Okay, so there's many different kinds of faith, and in religious faith, you have books, you have a Bible, you have a Quran, you have a Torah, you have all of these things. Like, there is a word, and this word transcends mankind to you. If you believe that God wants you to do something, that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot. You can be made to do, and people have been made to do, incredibly horrific, and to be fair, incredibly good things on behalf of the Word of God. But it is so personal and mental. Like, control is an illusion. That's as far as the rabbit hole goes. Yeah, control lies in where people think it lies. You know, I'm rewatching Game of Thrones, and I'm just looking at these people. I'm like, man, it is literally just a game of who is willing to conjure and inspire the most fear and violence to terrify the other people away from this Iron Throne, right? So her saying, the independent Scientologist saying that, like, it's sort of beyond truth at this point, it is so personal and so, like, individual to them. Like, I mean, it's a tale as old as time. I know people who have seen extensively that Scientology lies and doesn't work, and their eyes glaze over, and they just can't. They're so in deep, and they have so many connections and so many roots that the anticipation of the pain of like separation from all you've known is like enough to throw you out of the, you know, where you're at, throw you out of present time, you know, give you that cognitive dissonance, that what's it called, disassociation, you know. And the disassociation, as long as it lasts, you know, it can really frame your brain. If you're, I think the best part about independent Scientology is that it's free. That's the only good aspect. I wouldn't because Scientology is not worth paying for. Okay, so that's my thoughts on that. Now I could go into L. Ron Hubbard's entire actual life, but then there's the cognitive dissonance of, even though there are more people with more connections who have more access to find out through other real people who knew him, what L. Ron Hubbard's life was actually about, it just makes me feel so warm and fuzzy to just imagine him as like this perfect scientist guy. He's a little flawed, sure. He's a little quirky. He's a quirked up white boy, but he meant well, and he devoted half of his life to mankind. Like, it's so convenient. It's convenient to the individual to, in that moment, protect themselves from fear. And when you're having a conversation with someone who's dedicated to Scientology, if your intent is to dissuade them or to prove them wrong, what your expectation should be, I'm asking this person to have a full-on mental fucking breakdown right now. I'm asking this person to disconnect from everything. Let's say they're a second-generation Scientologist, as a perfect example. I'm expecting this person to not only get it in their head, but to process it, and then become unlodged from a lifetime of like oppressive manipulation in a single conversation. It's simply unrealistic. Okay. You know, and when you meet them with aggression, you sort of prove them right in a way. Like they believe that it's us versus them. They believe that there is some black and white kind of war or fight going on that kind of transcends, like, anyone who talks to you about it is using this like secret 1-1, which is basically means covertly hostile in Scientology's this 1-1 method to like confuse you or try to manipulate. You're primed for this. Scientology designs you to not only tolerate abuse so you can stay in Scientology, but to anticipate people lying to you about the group you're in. This is called a self-sealing system of belief. Because when a hole appears, you have a mechanism or you've learned something that brings you right back up to the top. And then you go down and somebody said, "Oh, my friend was in Scientology, and well, they had a horrible experience, and they were in so much debt, and they felt like, they were traumatized from the whole thing. They've been going through therapy." And then, well, maybe he was an SP, and you just, in a circle, self-sealing. It's sunk cost fallacy. again, yeah, another one like what is it? Therapy. Therapies that you have to. It's like statistical. It's like the statistically higher for someone to commit to a therapy that they've had to pay for, and that there's like actual science behind like if you pay for it, it's more likely going to work, and that has to do with like the commitment. Money is a commodity that has that there's anxiety around this. There's you forfeit or compromise yourself for the small piece. Let's say a life improvement course, or you do a basic book or introductory auditing or whatever. You give this small part of yourself and your money to Scientology. And the pitch is usually the hardest step. So there's your how did I write this? Okay. Like, so you believe, well, here, let me finish my thought. You exchange this, and once let's say it's small enough to where you get some sort of anecdotal benefit, and I'll elaborate on this in a second. But whatever positive you find from that, if you buy another one, if you compromise again, the likelihood that you are going to keep compromising, provided that your registrar is not overselling you and like making it super anxious and chaotic and obsessive, because that really drives people away, people who don't know how to sell, which is why they choose people who are like the most dedicated and the most communicative. You are more willing to keep contributing more and bigger and bigger and bigger, and soon you're taking out like $100,000 and you're like, oh, but it works because look at all the people who cheer for me when I leave the examiner's room. And I'm going to get to that, the examiner's room in a second. Right? So you believe this is something that you're doing to better yourself. And to the degree that it benefits you, and I'm being more general now, you, the Scientologist, will overlook horrible crimes, abuse, both systemic and individual, as well as encourage others to ignore victim statements in favor of a sort of whitewashed version of the world that you feel is safer. Okay? Because you are protected by others as participation in a group. Of course, you don't care if Scientology does a little bit of bad or bends the rules a bit, right? If you believe it when they say, we come back, a sort of reincarnation, or any other kind of theory to that regard, that's intended to show the bigger picture of the smaller efforts. You trust that such a good group would never lie to you. You want to do good. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. I wrote, the bigger picture of the smaller parts, you trust that such a good group would never lie to you. You want to do good, so they feel the same. The bad actions and the good actions feel the same because they are all for this greater purpose. And it's the purpose that's usually printed on the wall in an ideal org of Scientology, an ideal organization. One of the new ones. They put it in these big, the purpose of the International Association of Scientologists, which is... Oh, I'm so stupid. Okay. Okay, the purpose of the International Association of Scientologists. This is the fundraising arm of Scientology. Their purpose, they state it as, quote, a civilization without insanity, without criminals, and without war, where the able can prosper, and honest beings can have rights, and where man is free to rise to greater heights. Now that almost rhymes. I mean, despite the implicit ableism in that statement. I mean, Scientology is very ableist, but I digress. If you believe that this is the most important group in the world, this tech is just so pure and so honest and so effective and so truthful, it will you can't foresee yourself being manipulated. You just get manipulated. You know what I mean? You're not like, oh, I won't be convinced under duress or pressure to believe something that I don't believe now. It's like nobody thinks like that unless you've been a victim before and you're just really on guard. That's its own demon. But they're two halves of the same coin, right? No one knows that they're actively being manipulated until they're that I'm being manipulated. This guy is lying to me. Does that make sense? So that's just what I mean by that. You're willing to overlook the small illegalities. If you believe that you're 100 million year old spiritual being who's been a king and a soldier and a robot and a famous person, and you've done all these incredible things on all these different planets, and something as simple as trafficking a family to do some work, they just put a family on a plane and they take them over here and they do some work over here. What's the problem with that? It's perspective, right? Whereas legally that is human trafficking, and legally these people are not taken care of. But and in the Sea Org, a lot of people get abused as well as getting trafficked. So it's but these things are overlookable when you are in this sort of this situation. What a description for a place that causes people to have schizophrenia. Yes. And on that, identity issues. Yours truly notwithstanding. I did not like how my family name felt to me, My identity connected to my family as being, this sort of punching bag didn't sit right. I didn't respect my family because they only ever did things for themselves, and they only ever did things for Scientology, and Scientology is this huge, very brutal sort of steamroller. That just kind of cuts through everything, leaving nothing productive behind. Okay? So it's a problem. Okay? And I can usually tell when someone's lying to me about it. I could tell when my dad was lying to me about it because he had this shit-eating grin on his face every time he would be every time I would ask him, do we actually do that? Does Scientology actually do that? How does that work legally? And then he would just get this, he would scoff in this really kind of quirky way. And it was just very obvious that he was these normies think we're trafficking. They need to get over themselves. Snowflakes, am I right? Question: what streaming platform do you use? I love the transparent chat. I'm using Streamlabs, although be prepared for it to fuck up your setup literally every time you sign in. Every time I open this, nothing's connected. Nothing's I have a switchboard, a USB hub that I turn off my inputs. So nothing is ever constantly connected to my computer. But then when I reconnect them, it maybe like gets out of sync or whatever. It's annoying, but it will connect directly to YouTube or to Twitch or whatever. And you can plug this in. I had to Google a lot because I'm bad at this stuff. I'm good at tech, but I'm bad at like this, the formatting and the HTML and things like that. The number stuff. I had a friend in high school try to convince me that I was a dragon and we would fly together all over the world, but I didn't know because I would transform in my sleep. Was that shifting? I've heard about shifting. Again, it's incredible what the mind is capable of. Someone's having problems out there. There is like a 4-way intersection outside, so there's like 2. So just a lot of people honking at each other. Okay. Yeah. It like and that's why when I realized that when I left Scientology and I was thinking back about all like the old the past life incidents that I came up with, which I actually do intend to turn into a sort of at some point like an anthology type, because it was just like my imagination works pretty quick, I guess, and it's pretty I'm a very detail oriented person, so like the smells mattered and the color mattered, and very dark and sad incidents, I can say, but I just decided to turn them into fiction, which is what they are. So hopefully one day we'll get to see that. I mean, I think that'd be pretty cool. I think they're interesting, if not just to, sort of share. I like to write, and if it's entertaining to someone, I mean, it was entertaining to me for sure. It had a lot of emotion, so why wouldn't it be entertaining to others? But my point is, if you can convince yourself, and people's imaginations can do anything, I should have asked more questions. Apparently we had babies too. I'm like, ma'am, I am a woman. How the fuck did I get you pregnant? It's like seahorses. Reverse. I don't know how dragons work. That's a rough one. I feel like I could make up something about drag. I was so ready, honestly, when I read that to just go off into my own little. Well, how would that work? Yeah, there was some weird fetish type stuff happening over there. I hope you're safe. Hope you got out of there. Anyway, so moving beyond this aspect of what are you willing to accept from a group you believe is valuable, right? How far, this is a question for any independent Scientologist, or current Scientologist mostly, how far would the group have to go for you to feel that they do not have your best interest at heart? What would have to happen for you to distrust David Miscavige or L. Ron Hubbard? L. Ron Hubbard mostly. Like, what would you have to find out that would cause doubt? How severe would it have to be? Now, this does not have to be information that you provide to the person. But it's something to get them thinking. Like, it's basically saying, I don't want you to leave Scientology. I just don't want you to get fucking run over by abusive assholes who want to own you like an object. You know? So, what in your mind allows you to believe that a group or group leader with so much to lose would never lie in order to protect the power they have over a community that depends upon the leader's guidance to survive? All right? Does that make sense? So, and you don't have to start with what in your mind, because that's kind of a accusatory, that's kind of like a hostile foot forward. Like, it is projection also, because when I first did level 2 or grade 2, grade 2 is the part of the Bridge to Total Freedom where you do the confessional. Okay, this is where you learn. I mean, I had a bunch of different experiences like this. You know, I was sort of forced to find the guilt in everything from a young age. So, like, finding these transgressions and, you know, kind of came naturally to me. I'm very easy at criticizing myself. Very good, I should say, at criticizing myself. But it's really my want to change and be honest, not just with other people, but with myself, on this sort of fundamental level. And that I project that onto L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige and all of these other people. You know, in my mind at the time, I really didn't have a sense for or an understanding of other people's perspectives, the way power works in a group like that. I didn't really have I knew there were structures, but I just kind of assumed that everyone was playing their part and trying their best. I didn't account for mental illness. I didn't account for pathological personalities. I didn't account for verbal or physical violence being involved at the top. I didn't account for the technology itself not being designed around stability, but just to be like these like sporadic nuggets of validation to the leader. Right? Touch that wall until you come up with something in your mind. Wow. L. Ron Hubbard, thank you so much for telling me to touch a wall 900 times. You know, so I projected this onto the organization as a way to kind of say to myself and to others, I believe that they are being honest, that they have my best interest at heart. Okay? Without any certainty that this was true. And my recognition of that is why I give the most unreasonable benefit of the doubt to people, is because when I project benefit of the unknown, I should say, because there are factors that you don't consider until they meet your face. But you will bump up against that when talking to Scientologists, and especially when your intent is. Sorry, let me make this a little bigger. So, when the intent is based on your to keep your family together, to expand, like you were born into this thing, it is your whole life. It attaches itself to every single facet of your life, how you spend money, how you talk to people, how you respond to people, how you don't respond to people, how you act in public, your fears, your wants, your emotions, your impulses, anything. For example, for anything that my mother could identify in me that she saw, or she was convinced from her experience in Scientology that she should feel insecure about, she projected onto me. Okay, so her anxieties became my anxieties. Her and my dad, I mean, my whole family's anxieties became my anxieties, let me tell you. Except for my brother. We didn't really... Honestly, I think I've had less than 100 conversations with my brother in my life, believe it or not. Which is that's a whole weird thing. But despite all that, it's really about playing the long game. It's about sort of a cognitive disarming of people who are sort of designed to be anxious and afraid and anxious about the world and the people outside and the psychs and all of these things. The juxtaposition or the comparison of these two, of what they believe and then the reality in front of them, I found to be incredibly helpful in inspiring people to kind of like get there faster, you know? Okay? So we have these important questions. At least your empathy remained. My empathy skyrocketed after I left Scientology. Which is another reason I feel like I really did kill the old me, because whatever my brain was trying to do when I was in Scientology, I always felt like, maybe there's some, good part of myself somewhere that I'll find somewhere at some point on the bridge. I'll do this process. Maybe on my OT levels I'll find and I'll be able to develop it. When I left Scientology, all those parts of me just opened up, and it was very overwhelming, but it was very like skyrocketed my improvement. I was able to understand things that didn't make sense before, because things began to make sense for the first time in my fucking life. People were so much nicer than I thought they were going to be. Obviously, they were crazies. I've said that. They're always going to be crazies. But like, you realize like, oh my God, like I'm missing out on such a deeper, diverse community experience by, being in this, like what it amounts to a sci-fi magic book club. And it's very offensive to say that to people who are in Scientology, but these are the things that I don't like to compare, like the necessary evils. And I won't dwell on this here, but this is a much more ambiguous kind of personal question. Would I know how important people are now to me? Like, would I know how incredible this world is if I had not had the previous experience? I think I would have. I just think I probably would have been more of a dick. I probably would have just like, if I didn't have, I was reduced to such a to such a level that, I mean, I'd consider myself at that point, like from where I'm at now. Like, I think if I hadn't been reduced to such a low version of myself, if I hadn't been like almost nothing, the rise would not have felt so steep. Does that make sense? But you can educate people. You can inspire people. These aren't necessary experiences, which is why I'm not going to touch on it, because it's like, well, you see, Scientology was good because no. Okay, if you think it was good, if you think the only way people can learn is by suffering, this is a learned behavior. Yourself. You learned that the only way to learn is to suffer. Like, this is not, I do not believe that's true. Okay? Let me catch up on the chat. My line in the sand is that I won't tolerate abuse of others, especially for personal gain. Sadly, I've left several organizations and relationships over this line. Well, it's hard to make a lot of money without exploitation of people. So in these groups where the top needs a lot of money, you're going to have a lot of exploitation on the way there. Or you're walking into an exploitative system that, has a rigid system or cycle of spiderweb, a cycle of abuse already built in, and you're just walking into that. And part of that cycle of abuse is like good stuff in the beginning to lure you in, and then you see and a lot happens, and then on the back end there's the end of the cycle, but then it comes back around again. That's why it's a cycle. If there was nothing good about it, you probably would not have joined. And that's just a fact. So it's the compartmentalization. That's why I ask, what in your mind, like what allows you to believe that everyone in the world can just like be these lying, manipulative, crazy people, but somehow the person whom you give all of the power in this group is the only one who isn't lying to you. And any lies he tells are for the betterment of mankind. You're kind of patting yourself on the back there. You're kind of setting up the plot really complimentary to you and your self-preservation. Okay? So another more confrontational angle on this would be, are you so selfish that your validation from the group becomes more important than any other factor of moral consideration? Because remember, Scientology is not free, and all validation comes after you have shown your willingness to pay. There is the pitch. The registrar sells you something. Hardest step in this whole cycle. Okay? Then you've sold it. They're signing the contracts. They start what's called a routing form. Okay? You give the time and effort to reach arbitrary expectation. You are volunteering or paying for yourself to do all of the work. No verifiable EP, only anecdotal, right? There is an expected outcome that is personal to you, and when you find it, you are done. Oh, that's great. You found what you were looking for. This is what it's about, right? Right after that, immediately after that, an intense and deliberate validation, usually in the form of gathering students, staff, and other people who are other public for large displays of love bombing and praise, even pictures for promotional materials, right? When you finish a course, when you finish auditing, when you attain your next level or whatever, basically everyone who's not nailed down doing something is gathered in front of what's called the examiner's office. The examiner is where you go after an auditing session or after the completion of a course to verify your completion. They sit you down and they look for a certain reaction on the e-meter. And if they see it, then they sign off, you've completed. If not, you have to go back and do more, right? But once they know that you're done, on the routing form, you go back to the examiner, you come out of the room, and there's usually a bunch of people, yay, let's go, yeah, oh my God, woo, yeah. And you feel great. You're like, oh my God, holy shit. Love bombing. Essential to this cycle, right? Pavlovian, even. Immediately after that, while you're still high on this this love bombing, you re-sign as per the routing form. At the end of the routing form, which is like a checklist of all the things you do to complete a course and all the people you see, at the end, it is not, and you're done, and that's great. The end is you re-signing onto another course. This is, L. Ron Hubbard says this is essential. It is basically hard sell. It's like, it's the most aggressive and intense and manipulative kind of selling and salesmanship that exists. Is very brutal and disregards a lot of barriers. It disregards any barriers. Like, they will manipulate the fuck out of you to get you to buy the product. And it's not exclusive to Scientology, but they use it. They use a book called Hard Sell. And this is, it's crazy. And there's, and I see you've just reminded me of how Apple customers are welcome to the store openings or big product launches. That's marketing, and that is fine. Okay. But depending, and there's some issues there. I mean, like, what they do with, like, that's not a bad excuse. That's not a bad example. But marketing is one thing. And the fact that Scientology says that they do not sell products, which they do. It is a business cult, okay? They sell products for fixed prices before you can do anything, okay? I'd say the true product is a manipulated is a manipulated person, but they have a list of items per their spiritual enlightenment that you have to pay for in order to get it. It is literally a business, which is also why they should not be tax exempt. I digress. Marketing, Apple's marketing is one thing, right? But even the cultier aspect of Apple, an example, I'll give you one example, is that when you're talking to anyone who doesn't have iMessage or someone who has another phone, it's green. They don't let you send full pictures to each other, or they don't have this, like, it's like, oh, well, they're lesser. It's like this small little implied, like, they're not one of us yet. You know, even that alone, like, you can recognize, like, the covert aspects there. But I mean, Apple's not, like, sending you push notifications to I mean, I'm not going to get into, like, the free market, if that's what it could be called, because we're talking about cults, a specific cult, and cults in general, high control groups. You'd find more similarities to these groups in the management structures of these organizations but not so much in the like business to customer transaction aspect. Commercials do a lot of the heavy lifting. Commercials, I find, and I will die on this hill. And I mean this, I hate commercials. I hate any commercial or advertisement I see. I loathe them. Okay? Because it's literally this like effort to just, it's this like very bizarre like infantilization of like the human mind of like, you like this song by the Foundations? The Foundations? The Temptations. God, I'm so stupid. Okay. You like this song by the Temptations? Well, now it's attached to an Instacart ad. And oh, Instacart. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, fuck Instacart. Are you kidding me? You know how many bad experiences I've had with Instacart? Now they have Instacart pickup. That's called grocery shopping. You've just you've just removed this like aspect where you're like, how else can we just like make our product more expensive and sell it to everybody? It's like, yeah, you have like a weird aesthetic, quirky logo that some motion designer was underpaid to make, and you're putting it to some catchy music. So like my positive reaction to the music is supposed to like connect to the positive, you know, to the product, and I'm supposed to just think, you know, and the jingles go out of the way. Have you heard, like, there's some dumbass jingles out there. I could go on for hours about how I hate commercials. It's one reason I don't watch Hulu. I hate watching Hulu because they just like, they added a bunch of ads, and those ads go on forever. And it's in the there's no like they're not even synced up with like the average commercial. Like, you know, you watch a show and it gets to a certain point and there's like tension and then it goes to a commercial. And Hulu doesn't do that. Hulu's just like, up mid sentence, there's an ad break. Oh, ad break. Oh, ad break. And YouTube, where it's tricky, I gotta pay bills somehow. This is not my only source of income, but I don't really profit very well off of YouTube. So I make concessions where I'm forced to. But I don't monetize videos that I take seriously, like that I think have a serious connotations. I intentionally don't monetize them for that reason. I don't like the gimmick. Just show me a fucking product. Show me that it's going to be better than the last bullshit you sold me, and I'll go from there. Like, it's just so gross every time I see it. But I am on a massive tangent here. Whew, let me catch up with the chat. Let's see. Y'all gonna rile me up, but that's okay. I tried microdosing. Ooh, yummy. It just reminded me of Steve Jobs was an awful culty kind of guy, right? But you know, and he's also he was more like, he felt that his products were revolutionary, and some of them were. But did you really need? It's more subjective there. Did you really need a phone that could also be an iPod? Like, you can ask that question about any product that's come out in the past, like 15 years. I think it's more subjective. But like businesses and cults have a lot in common. It's just where the law intervenes, I think, is the biggest problem in the comparison between the two. If I can get, I pull out my hair over commercials. Always have. I used to PA on video shoots. I did 2 commercials and I had to quit because they were so gross and icky feeling. And they're just so fake. Everyone you see in a commercial is lying to you. They're reading from a script. Like, no, I don't think you like these paper towels more than the leading brand. You're on TV. You're legally required to be paid and scripted for this. This is pandering to like, oh my God. You know, it's like, I just don't buy it. And it just throws it in my face. And also for the dumbest things. I will buy a product that I've never seen a commercial for, go home, have this product in front of me, and then somehow a commercial comes up for it. Which, again, another reason I don't like them is my own personal conspiracy theory about adware and about, you know, what they're listening to and blah blah blah. But it's very reasonable. It's not insane. It's not insane. It's just me. It's the Charlie Kelly meme with the Pepe Silvia and like the whiteboard in the back with all the things. Like, you know, it's not crazy. Every time I'm washing my hands, I get a skippable ad. Or like every time I'm doing the dishes, I get a skippable ad. So I can't put water on my phone. But every time I'm not, they're unskippable. Why is that? That's my Tucker Carlson. Why is that? The Temu app is basically malware. Yeah. And if you order from Temu, there's a special place in hell for you. I mean, I get, like, you got to have, like, the most, like, primitive brain. Maybe that's harsh. But it is Ooga Booga coded to actively purchase things from Temu. Anyway, we were talking about a topic. My disdain for capitalism aside, so we talked about how the compromise of your own effort and money can lead to the repetition of activity. So if you pay for a therapy, you're more likely to benefit from it and do it again. Okay. Sorry to derail the convo. That was me, Big Dog. This podcast with the Trust Me podcast. Again, I will plug that. Great podcast. Had a lot of fun, a lot of interesting questions. Really, it seemed very curious in a way that was not as surface level as other ones. But on this podcast, I did not. We were having such a good conversation. I did not know when to shut the fuck up. So we had to break it into two different episodes. But I do highly recommend you check that out. It is a lot of like my origin of stuff, but we do go into other stuff. Megan and Lola were very, very kind, very interested, funny. So yeah, go check them out. Show them some love. But we talked about the same sort of thing. Oh, and my point was I talked too much. Okay. All right. So from here, here are some more questions to put you in the mindset of helping a Scientologist leave. This is not for what I described of the confrontational, the selfish examples. Scientology can break into two categories, or I'd say three. The third is sort of a situational variable. Okay, I'd say there's three parts, three different kinds of Scientologists. I haven't formulated this in the most perfect words, but it's something that I've thought about for a long time. You have the how do I put this? You have the people who do it for a purpose, okay, for the implied helping of others, right? They are weaponized by their own satisfaction in helping others. And these people as individuals show care to others. They usually stay pretty low on the bridge, which is where they don't get exposed to those higher, more insane aspects. They are usually broke, for a lack of a better term. But they're interested in helping people. They are actively nice to people. You see this in other religions too. Cults. Groups. But there is a base sort of rational level. And these are a lot of people who end up leaving. And I've known a lot of these people, and I've known these people to leave. These are the ideal Scientologists to try these methods on. And then you have the other side. You have the second side, which settles itself primarily in the Sea organization, but is you'll see more of these people as public Scientologists. You won't really see them on staff, okay? And these are these people who do Scientologies to benefit themselves. These are people who use Scientology for affirmation, for validation, for praise, for personal benefit, excluding like actually doing things to help people. They believe, and I believe my mother is one of these people, both my parents, they believe that helping themselves is helping other people because they are this kind of person, right? They are this very important, and it could just be that they're only interested in themselves. Either way, Scientology as a technology feeds narcissism. It provokes more narcissistic tendencies. So you have this whole other side, and these sides don't get along, right? But the side I'm talking about now definitely believes themselves to be the pinnacle of what it means to be a Scientologist, whether by their own narcissistic tendencies or personality or whatever else, or by Scientology convincing them that they are in fact a god in human form. And this just takes a toll on the psychology of a human being. Either or. Then the third is more of an arbitrary variable that could be caused by many different factors, but it is the sort of, I guess I should say, the defeated or the hollow. And these are the people that I've seen who are sort of kind of dragging, how do I say this? They're kind of crawling through life. And a lot of these people are in the Sea Org. I mean, when you get defeated, you get brutalized emotionally in the Sea Org. A lot of these people are simply just hanging on. They trust the system, but they don't really feel. I don't really see. There's not a lot of activity going on. They kind of stay the same. Like I see this in a lot of people who are tasked with cleaning the flag building and doing menial labor, and sometimes security personnel. Security personnel, although, are usually chosen based on their own sort of lack of hesitation on exerting violence over others. But I guess that's ideal in a cop. So these aren't really people who are interacting with others. These are kind of people that the downtrodden. Yes, these are downtrodden. These are people who appear as, part of the background. These are like husks. Like you can't really get a conversation out of them. They kind of just, they spark up for a second, but then they return to their place or whatever's going on there. And that is, and I have friends who are like that. Friends I don't necessarily talk to as much because they're hard to get a hold of, but I've seen people close to me become like this. So these you should tailor your approach to not just what you hear from these people, but what you see them doing. Okay. I don't know if I have a way to help the third. I'm just a guy. I've never been able to. Maybe when I do, I'll have a better understanding, or, at some point along the line, I'll learn something. But it's just beyond my scope of experience. And I believe that we should have a lot more professionals advising the solutions to these groups. It is very intense, and this is a topic that I think we as a community should be more intelligent about. We should plan certain actions to obtain certain results. There are individual people who are involved in the continuation of Scientology having tax-exempt status. These individual people have lives. They have routines. They have things. They're human beings, flesh and blood. And appealing to these people, I believe, is more valuable in the long run, or educating more people to have these conversations, to find what works and do what works. I know I said that in my Why Do We Protest video. I think I said everything I need to say about like how I feel about Scientologists. I did. I'll say it. I'll say I had a change of heart within the past year, I'd say. That really sort of clarified my outlook on the situation, and I think it would be irresponsible of me to just make fun of, like, I see the humor in Scientology and the humor in believing in Scientology, but it really doesn't help anyone to treat them like they're animals, or treat them like they're like every single person involved is on David Miscavige levels of crime. Like, these are manipulated, broken people who are in some sort of logical loop. Like, they're actively terrified of you in their own way. And those who aren't are terrified of you being a person they could be terrified of. It's like, anyone who's been in a Scientology organization for long enough, like, will tell you that, like, these are not happy people. Not really. There's a lot of smiling through the pain. And I think that happens all over the place. But for the most part, I think it's... if I want to do anything positive, I had to change my outlook. I had to be more empathetic. really just target people who I believed were directly benefiting Scientology's continued existence, like, including my father, who I believe is a coward I mean, I honestly have no shortage of things to say about him, but he's building a bubble of narcissistic, like, bizarre delusion around himself. I mean, he's no one can ruin his life better than he is, but Scientology is laying the tracks, and he is just shoveling coal into that engine. So he knows that what he's doing is questionable, to say the least. But I feel like, especially after I came out against him, that level of pressure probably, I don't plan to see him anytime soon, which is fine. I could go without being talked down to for as long as possible. I mean, people try to on Twitter, but very few people actually know me or make proper predictions of my behavior. Watching some of the drama as a never-end, I feel like Scientology is a narcissism factory. I call it that. You took the words right out of my mouth. That is absolutely true. And this is sort of part of my whole point of making this video, is that the level of importance you feel as a Scientologist does not leave you overnight. And if you leave without sorting your shit out, or if you leave and just say, I'm going to just push it down, you're repressing all of it. All the importance, all the good, all the bad, every piece of it, you're just pushing it away, and you're just pushing that, like, that bubble. I'm picturing like one of those mozzarella balls, like you're just squeezing it down until and imagining that it's not going to break. I don't know why mozzarella was the first thing I thought of, but I was thinking of like a shiny bubble that you squeeze until it pops. You push it down. I'm sure anything can fit that description, but like, it's just so cliche and such a common historical tale that you'd think would just be sort of built into the human experience. Like, to feed your anger, to feed your narcissism, and to like make it all about you. Like, you know how many people have done that in human history? You know, people who dug only one grave after seeking revenge and found that grave to only fit them? It was only their own. It's just a lot of repetition and a lot of not learning from the past. And I think you'd have to be really arrogant to, even if you trust Scientology, you'd have to be very arrogant to imagine that they're honest about everything. They have so much to lose. They have literally everything to lose if they do crimes. Game of Thrones. The Lannister family has literally everything to lose if people know that Tommen or Joffrey have no claim to the throne. Spoiler alert, they're bastards. There's a lot of gross stuff happens in that show. But like, obviously they're going to lie. Like, if you think everything they're saying is the truth, you got to suspend your disbelief, like, aggressively. Anyway, so that's sort of the point, is like, their experiences in Scientology, as varied as they might be, like, when you leave, it robs you of something that you had hope for, And it, depending on how much you invested, that like relative quality is going to be ripped away from you. Like that relative quality of importance that you've invested is now gone. Okay, so that can bounce back. I don't know how, but let me tell you, I don't know like the mechanics of it, but it's because it's like visual to me. It's like all in my head. So I can't like describe it like a you know, there are people smarter than I who can describe this, but like it comes back. Like it never goes away. It just, you get the bizarro side, you know, where you lost confidence, where you lost self-esteem, where you lost this. It just flips on its head. And if you don't handle it, you're gonna hurt people. And we're watching this happen. Like I've lost weight. I have actually not lost weight. I have gained weight. But I'm not worried about it. I just went to the doctor recently. I'm very healthy, which is good. Brush my teeth, which I cannot recommend enough. Always brush your teeth, kiddos. Especially as an adult, you get bored, you get lazy. You really got to brush your teeth because dentistry is expensive. It's annoying, but you can get into a habit. You can get into routine. Appreciate everything you do. Society is so woke. Nobody can call this cult for what it is. Okay. Define woke. Oh, I don't know. I prep myself for The Blood. Oh, The Boys? Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. No spoilers. I'm about to watch it, but I've heard some things. So it's really I'm expecting it to be gross, but it's literally about narcissistic superheroes. So fighting off against capitalism. It's, you know, that's all it'll be. I'm sure it'll look fine. Let's see. What else did I have? Because I have this whole thing. I guess where I can end this. Because I don't think I have another hour left in me. More specifically on this topic, I had a video that I wanted to watch, and we can, if I find that at some point, but I really just couldn't find it. It was about that, but I know if I say it, like 10 people are going to send it to me the second I get off stream. But there were some independent Scientologists who were protesting Scientology and looking for reform. And this is where I believe a lot of them are going to run into problems. Mostly because to go up against Scientology, which is a cult, you have to understand what a cult is and the difference between... A cult is not just an aggressive fascination with something. A cult has, in its definition and structure, actions that infringe upon the personal rights and freedoms of its members, of a group's members. Which, again, OWs, PTSness, motivators, TRs, assists. Assists less so there. I just had it written down. But, you know, there's tech that literally controls how you behave and act and how you are expected to view people in Scientology differently just because they are there. And it's so, you know, people are always going to do what they want, and they're always going to believe what they want, and they're free to do that. But there is a difference between belief and action. And I will never, like, unless you're honest about it, because you can see action. Action is something you put into the world. Action is something you do outside of your head. Okay? It's not your faith, belief, that's all fine. That's inside, that's how you cope, that's whatever. But action is external. It affects others and the world around you. Okay? You cannot justify action as meaningless because you are, when you do an action, especially when you're like saying something or you do something or you advocate for something, or like you have the ability with that action to impact others negatively. And especially when it's unnecessary, these negative actions are remembered and they hurt people. They reduce another person's quality of life, or especially with attack on psychiatry, the amount of vile things I've heard Scientologists say about people who are just trying to seek therapy, or who have chronic depression and need intervention by literally the only medicine human beings have to even remotely combat this, that they admit is not 100% effective. Scientology is still like, oh, you take psych drugs? What are you, a fucking gross, degenerate, degraded, like pedophile, loser, asshole? Like, they're so afraid of all of this. Like, that's an action. Saying that to a person is an action. Advocating for people, that's saying, you know what we're going to do before we do this, just to fucking validate this point I'm making. I have a video pulled up that I wasn't actually going to play, but we're going to play it now. This involves people I know personally, so this will be fun. But we're done. We're mostly, I'm done with all the things that I've written. But there is like a direct impact by your actions. Okay? My goal is to, if I have actions at all, it's to negatively affect people who, by their actions, add a net negative or detract from a positive quality of life for the majority of people. Okay? As all people. I include all people in the majority. I don't believe in phrenology. I don't believe in eugenics. All people are valuable. Okay? So, and I do things for me, but I'm allowed. You're allowed to do things for yourself. I'm not just like sacrifice. I'm not some like holier than thou. I suppose I have a certain skill with articulation that allows me to break things down like this. But again, I don't have endless empathy. I get irritated a lot by some of these people. I have my own issues with coping with things. So like, I feel just as human as all these people. It's just so fucking annoying when they're like, oh, but we're doing good. Like, they think that like other people's inaction is somehow better than, or somehow worse, like actively doing worse than them fighting against this imagined evil. So let's watch this video to prove my point. This is the Scientology exhibit at Piedmont Park, where it's basically they set up a, I think this is in Georgia, because I specifically know the person who is at this exhibit. This is the Industry of Death Museum that they put up to scare, basically like a scare tactic to get people to fear psychiatry by highlighting instances of psychiatric misuse and the misapplication and like the instances of abuse. All just wrap all that together. None of the benefit, no good stuff has ever been acknowledged by Scientology regarding psychiatry, which is why I don't respect the opinion. They not only don't have a solution, they want to just get rid of it. Bye-bye. Doing Scientology is not a solution, because not everyone has $100,000. But, which I'd say is like a bare minimum for like the most despondent ne'er-do-well to improve or go up the bridge or whatever the hell you want to say. But like, it's so... Here, let's just watch the video.
You might also see a rather shocking exhibit separate from the festival that is intended to try to debunk psychiatry. It's supported by the Church of Scientology. Doug Richards is live there now with more. Doug?
Well, Cheryl, you would have to wander pretty far off the beaten path from the Dogwood Festival to get into Magnolia Hall here at Piedmont Park, where you would find an exhibit called Psychiatry and Industry of Death. And if you were to wander inside, you would find numerous images of sort of old school lunatic asylums over to the right over here, a little further.
It also, like, if you look into CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, one of the front groups that controls this, which is controlled by Scientology and fully staffed by Sea Org members, you'll find even like you'll find L. Ron Hubbard disputing. They make so many excuses, and they even like dispute evolution in certain places. Like, there's a lot of weird pseudoscience in Scientology, but like especially with their the burden of proof for a Scientologist is this like shiny robot of a person. God only knows what normal is considered in Scientology, but let me tell you, it has never been achieved.
Moreover, you would find images of Nazi Germany. The proprietor of this exhibit says that this is not intended as an effort.
Wally, there's no shortage of sadists inside psychiatry, in fairness to the cult. There are no shortage of sadists on Earth. And when you have a field that puts people in positions of power over the mental well-being of others, yeah, predators are going to find their way in there, which is why you intentionally plot reform, or you intentionally plot safeguards, or you see where the holes are and you patch them, you fix them, you improve it for the benefit of mankind, not remove it entirely and burn it all away. There are people who I would consider truly evil in like the most goofy meaning of the word. But be honest with yourself when you generalize. Every time you catch yourself generalizing, be like, that's a generality. See how that changes your arguments in the future. Not even like you have made a bad argument. It's true. There are bad people in psychiatry. There are bad people in CPS. There are bad people in FEMA. There are bad people in the Peace Corps. There are bad people in St. Jude's Children's Hospital. You know, there are bad people in the UN. There are bad people. And that's not even talking about all the bad people who are just bad people for the sake and in their own bad groups, you know. It's less of a testament to psychiatry, the failures of psychiatry, and more of a testament to the failure of the government to support the scientific field of mental health in general, because psychiatry is just one branch, right? It's not a full umbrella of activity, and the medicine aspect is just so vague. Like, what a high horse Scientology sits on, saying that psych drugs sometimes don't work. If only you see our shining, success stories that we literally force our members to write, or they're not allowed to complete the course. So, it's like, what compared to what does this not work? Like, someone can read a book, and that book can inspire them that specific person to like go on a killing spree, a murder spree, and shoot up a shopping mall. So like, what's the bar here for a rational response? People react differently to different things. You know, seeking to destroy something because you have an inability to improve it kind of says something about what you stand for, and the emotional intellect of the group as a whole, and the emotional maturity of the people, like, who are in charge of this. And again, the mental health, and I see this. I have a close friend with schizophrenia, and his most recent experiences with just 2 bad psychiatric consultants has really fucked him over. You're not going to find the right person overnight. That's all I really have to say about that. I mean, I'm, you know, again, there are people who also, like, there are professionals who cling to sort of archaic, you know, examples. That's a nuanced variable, just like people who don't keep up to date on the sciences, the evidence-based treatment aspects of, you know, recovery or therapy or what have you. I mean, the science always moves faster than the practice. But we should change that, shouldn't we? We should enforce, like, better results from the mental health field as a society, not just burn that shit to the ground. Like, yeah. I mean, but that's not what I want. That's not the point here. Let's just finish this. Almost 3-minute video. God forbid I be able to get through a 3-minute video without yapping to the high heavens.
Add the roles of the Church of Scientology.
On the right, that's a guy performing a lobotomy. It's the classic ice pick through the nasal cavity.
Pretty grisly, isn't it?
It is.
When was the last time there was a lobotomy?
This is Deborah McKay. She was the Department of Special Affairs at Church of Scientology Atlanta, which is where I was on staff. I know her very well. I saw her every day. She is basically a finger of the arm that is OSA. Whoa! I clicked it twice on full screen. The DSA is like local OSA, if that makes sense.
Oh, 1950, I don't know, 1955. Then, of course, it was outlawed.
But it's still relevant in your opinion?
It's still relevant because it's part of the history and the evolution of this particular method.
Is it fair to call psychiatry an industry of death?
Well, it may be a little bit shocking, but then that's how you gain attention. Is there such a thing as ADHD? No. And
so you think these mental illnesses are baloney?
That's right. We do.
All of them?
All of them. It is, of course, you know, right in line with the viewpoints of the Church of Scientology.
But Scientology and science are 2 vastly different things.
They're very, very slick.
Says the chair of psychiatry at Emory University.
We have evidence from science that there are treatments that work to help brain diseases. The Church of Scientology does not have that.
What alternative would you propose to psychiatry?
See, as much as you can hate psychiatry to the high heavens, and I do agree. I saw you. I think psychiatry, you said, they would have a way more utility if big pharma was restricted in peddling profits. 100%. Medicine should not be profit motivated, but that's more a problem with capitalism and America. The American government makes it very easy to profit where your profit is attainable. If you can make money, you should make money, despite the consequence, despite everything else. This is like a carte blanche illness in America. This is the mental illness of America. Capitalism, I'd say, is the biggest disorder America has. I mean, the world has it. But you get what I'm trying to say. We have that quirky capitalism that disregards all citizens who aren't billionaires, basically. It just sucks for everyone under all circumstances, unless you are so rich, unfathomably rich, that money is like an afterthought for you. You know, what a world that would be. But he's right. This chair of psychiatry guy they just showed is right. Like, the bare minimum is having a solution that can be reproducible. And under the right conditions, psychiatry at least has this. And I'll tell you, in more cases than Scientology. So this isn't elevating psychiatry to some perfect system. Okay, this is the comparison between Scientology, who is demanding psychiatry be eliminated because they have a history of violent attempts at fixing people. Might I remind the Church of Scientology that they have an extensive history of abusive and violent behaviors that should that not also be what we remember? Should we not also hold you to the same standards that you attempt to hold everybody else at? That's something to chew on.
Well, I get asked that frequently. I would imagine that the Church of Scientology would be happy to be considered.
What alternative would you propose?
Diseases.
She says,
the Church of Scientology does not have that.
What alternative would you propose to psychiatry?
Well, I get asked that frequently. I would imagine that the Church of Scientology would be happy to be considered as one of them, quite frankly.
As an alternative to psychiatry?
Absolutely. I've actually been a member of the Church of Scientology for about 33 years.
Okay. And do they keep your head clear mentally?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a happy life.
Deb McKay,
her entire life is on staff, by the way. In the basement. In a windowless office. I mean, she gets to go out and talk to these people, but that's all she does. She goes out and advocates for Scientology to, like, senators and shit and businesses. It's like her whole job is like holding on to a thread of positivity. I mean, she was nice enough, but we never had any meaningful conversations. The violence isn't surprising, but it is also shocking. What's shocking is seeing it with your eyes, which is what makes this effective for people. And putting this, scary fonts, and everything's in like this rusty Silent Hill aspect, and they show these things which are shocking, but they emphasize it. There's an intent behind it to cause a very specific reaction.
Proprietor says that the folks at Piedmont Park asked her to keep the exhibit separate from the Dogwood Festival, which is going on just outside of the Magnolia Hall and will be here through Sunday. Live at Piedmont Park, Doug Richards, 11 Alive News.
So I always laugh when I watch that video because her just saying that, well, I'd hope Scientology would be considered in doing that. Here's what I'll say to close this out. If you ask me, what would I do? Put me in charge of Scientology tomorrow, right? What would I do? And if you honestly asked me that question, this is what I would say. I would take a very experienced panel, and this I can't imagine this would ever happen with all the money that Scientology has. They could probably make it work, but for the benefit of whoever gives a shit, and to put an end to it, honestly, I think this would cause so many more problems than it would solve. But in my wishful thinking, this is the thought experiment that I would put. I would get an extensive panel of scientists from as many relevant fields as humanly possible. Medicine, physicists, math, especially sociologists and maybe even a couple religious scholar, whatever, philosophers. Just put them together, really have like an honest, evidence-based what works and what doesn't. I can tell you what the answer will be. I can tell you what the results will be. It would bankrupt Scientology, which would be a net positive. But it would just show, like, you would just detangle the web of L. Ron Hubbard's like confusion, and you would see where he stole things from. You would see his personal life, because the amount of things you would have to know about this man would be so deep. We would, like, the amount of people, the amount of things that would be uncovered, basically, it would show it all as a scam, in my opinion, or a wishful smokescreen to make a buck. That's reductive, but again, that's why I don't do this individually with people, because I skip to the end, having already considered all the pieces in the middle. I've already done all that work. I skip to the end because I'm impatient. I'm not actually. I just with certain conversations with certain people, it doesn't matter. But you want to prove the efficacy of Scientology, you use practical science. Go for it. Go ahead. I'm not the arbiter of who should believe what and who should do what, it's all very, to me, sad. And because Scientology hurts people. And so when you go out of your way to keep it in your life after you leave, you're really only hurting yourself and possibly others. So that's all I really have to say about that. I'm truly shocked at the all-out assault on Scientology right now. I remember someone I knew talking about this cult almost 20 years ago, and it was at its peak and seemingly untouchable. Yeah, I think it actually reached its peak. No, yeah, I wouldn't say I'd say just before that. Like, there was optics-wise, it's always going to say that it's bigger than it is. And it's the smallest it's ever been since it started, So, but I think the internet, the more people are able to talk about what's happened to them anonymously, the more people are going to talk. And the more information, the more victim statements, the more this, the more that. It is a sum. Each story, any that anyone can just come online and talk about a story and hear a story. Anonymous was huge. That really put a huge shotgun blast into the side of Scientology, and everything they've done to hide since then has just amplified it. But yeah, this was long, but here's to I hope any portion of this was beneficial. And I'll be back. I don't have a schedule, but I'm building up to commit myself to a more consistent schedule. So until next time, I appreciate y'all for being here, and peace.